Welcome to the Arm Barn, the newest podcast added to the Just Baseball Network. I'm your host, Peter Appel, but I will be playing point guard for our center, which is Tucker Davidson, the left-handed pitcher for the Los Angeles Angels. I'm really excited for this podcast, Tucker. You and I have been talking back and forth about getting on the mic and just talking baseball, something you know best and something I'm trying to do. But of course, you're the player. So we're going to be really happy to hear all of your insight, whether that comes from, your day of pitching or anything across Major League Baseball. But first, how are you, man? Spring training, right?
Great. Thanks for the big introduction. Yeah, doing good. Spring training's full steam. So it's been good. Games are underway, and it's been busy mornings and boring afternoons. So I've been playing a lot of golf, but enjoying it.
Yeah, so what is before we kind of get into what people should expect from the podcast, obviously, it's tough to talk to players about what kind of their spring training regimen looks like, right? Because I think a lot of us think, yeah, they just go out and play and that's all we see on the television, right? We don't know what happens beforehand, what happens afterwards, or anything like that. And you've been through a couple of spring trainings now.
Yeah, so pretty much you practice before you play. You've got a full day ahead of you, and that's regardless if you're playing that day or if you're not playing that day. So I pitched yesterday, so I had a relatively easy day, but we had a fundamental day. So like fundamental defense where we had all 9 guys out on the field. We had pitch comm in, and we were just running different situations of, hey, when we put this pick play on, everybody's got to know. And it's kind of just running it through. Everybody hears it on pitch comm. Boom. All right, we're back picking at second here. All right, everybody knows what we're doing. Everybody's on the same page. And just like with the new rules and everything, we're learning on the fly. Just like if this runner breaks at this point, we're going to throw it to here. We're not going to throw it here. We're going to do this. We're going to pitch here. Just kind of learning the new rules, everything adapting. But typical morning, I'm waking up at 6:30, getting there at about 7:15, eating breakfast. We stretch around 9:30 once games start, and then go stretch throw. If we have a team fundamental that day, we do that. If not, it's just PFPs, pitcher fielding practice. And then we're kind of done for the day. We go condition, and then hitters will do BP, and pitchers do whatever they got to do the rest of the day. If you're pitching that day, you're probably going to be hanging out a little bit, but if you got to lift or arm care, whatever you got to do that day. So that's kind of the typical day. And then 1:00 every day there's a game. So if it's a home game, we have to stay for a couple innings, watch the starter. But if it's a road game, you're out of there at 10:30, 11. It's kind of great whenever there's a road game because you're like, oh, I can hit a tee time at noon.
You are living the dream. Not only are you a professional baseball player for the Los Angeles Angels, you're on a team with a certain amount of good players, including Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout. We might see a lot of them in the World Baseball Classic. So in this episode, we are doing a full World Baseball Classic preview. We're going to give you some of teams that we think can win, but also just kind of going over the players. Obviously, Tucker's been around the game, knows some of these guys, maybe some guys that we haven't heard of that he's heard of. Really want to hear, obviously, your insight. But first, I have to ask you this question because I just saw it recently. Shane McClanahan was on MLB Network, and he was doing a really cool interview kind of adjusting to the pitch clock, right? Like as a pitcher yourself, it seems like, at least for me, I love it so far. Like, of course, I have always been a proponent of I'd rather have 200 games, but those games be 2 hours and 30 minutes instead of 162 games. Like I want more baseball, but that doesn't necessarily mean I want the game to last so much longer. And what Shane said was it took a little bit of time to adjust. He felt that he was really rushed, but then he started to realize, hey, I feel like I have to pitch because I see the clock going down 10-9, but then I think I still have 10 more seconds to get set. So what has the adjustment been like for you? Was it like that where it was really rushed initially, then you've gotten better at it, or is it still work in progress, or did you hit the ground running?
I always worked fast. I got to learn from it last year in AAA, so that kind of like gave me a head start this year where I was kind of helping guys with like, hey, you have more time than you kind of think. Like the only time you really have to rush is when you look up and you're coming set and there's 4 seconds left. You're like, oh, I really got to get up and go. But really, it's kind of slowing down. I remember the first inning, my first outing, first hitter, I was like out of breath, and I was like, "Hey, you have time. You still have 8 seconds on the clock, like you said, and you can just like sit there and hold." And yesterday, we really haven't seen many pitchers like holding until it was really yesterday. It was Mike Myers versus I think it might have been Joe Adell. Joe called time, and that you only get one time call as a hitter. So Mike sat up there on the mound until there was 1 second and then picked up his leg, and that hitter was sitting in there for 12 seconds. So that trying to be locked in on a pitch is kind of the biggest thing. So I think it's in the pitcher's favor right now. and it's going to probably continue because the batters are the ones that swinging at the pitches in the dirt, and they're the ones I need the mental reset. But the biggest thing we're trying to figure out is you give up the double in the gap and you're going to back up third. When is the clock starting? Is it whenever you get the ball back? Is when you're on the mound? And that's why we're kind of the gray area. And I think like MLB's trying to like find out like the perfect answer. And I think having all these spring training games of like it's as soon as it hits the pitcher's glove, and but the first baseman can't hold it. And there's just like different instances. So we're trying to like figure out and trying to just maximize the amount of time out there so we don't just give up free strikes and free balls.
And that's why I'm so excited about this podcast, because not only are Tucker and I going to be breaking down his starts, talking about general news in Major League Baseball, and this is a perfect year to start it because we have a guy on the mound with a new rule in the pitch clock. You know, of course, there's been different baseballs that have been put in play. There's so many different things that are happening consistently in Major League Baseball, and Tucker and I are going to be sitting down once a week and talking through all that, but while also diving into stuff like the World Baseball Classic, just overall fun stuff that's happening in baseball that's, of course, sometimes out of both of our controls, like a World Baseball Classic, All-Star Game, World Series. Like you might be in both of them, but we're just going to talk through them, get the best insight from a player like yourself. Besides that, like the listener, what should the listener kind of expect from you on this podcast? Like, what do you want to bring?
I guess it's more of a behind the scenes kind of look of just like it might be just what I did that day. And it's a little bit different because what the fans see is really we hit BP, pitchers kind of stand out in the outfield, and then they sit on the bench, and that's kind of about it. And then they pitch every fifth day. And I think that's kind of not what goes on a lot. I think a lot of it depends on a lot of things happening behind the scenes of how's your body's feeling this day. Oh, you pitched 2 days in a row, you're down today. And it's like, well, why didn't so-and-so come in the ninth? It's like, it's pitched 5 out of the last 7 days. That's taxing on the body. We need him in August, just like different things that we can kind of learn from and just to continue to adapt. And I think just I'm very analytical, so I can dive deep of why this pitcher's good or why this hitter's so good or what makes this hitter really good. Like yesterday, I was throwing to the Royals and Salvador Perez is just spitting on sliders. And I'm having to watch this video today of like, why do you spit on sliders? Why do you look the ball for it up? Just like different things like that. So hopefully bring some knowledge and just a little inside tips and tricks that I can maybe give some fans.
Yeah, we're going to be covering all things baseball on this channel, from his tips and tricks, behind the scenes stuff in Major League Baseball, and of course, overall Major League Baseball news from the inside of a player who's on the Los Angeles Angels and will be pitching every fifth day. So World Baseball Classic, just a quick kind of little overview so what people should expect if maybe they've never heard of the World Baseball Classic, maybe they're new to it, maybe there's some diehard fans out there. So the World Baseball Classic is going to start on March 8th, and the winner take all game is on March 21st at Lone Depot Park. This is the 5th World Baseball Classic ever. The last champion was the United States. They won in 2017. Japan is the only country with 2 titles. They've won in 2006 and 2009. And then the Dominican Republic is the only other country with the title, taking it home in 2013. So the WBC has actually expanded from 16 teams to 20 teams. And these 20 teams are going to be split into 4 pools. So 5 teams per pool. And then these teams are playing each other. And then everyone else from Pool A is going to play Pool B, and Pool C is going to play Pool D. And the original pool games, they're going to be from March 8th to March 15th in Taichung City, Taiwan, Tokyo, Japan, Miami, Florida, and Phoenix, Arizona. Then the winners of these pools will play in Miami March 15th to March 18th. And then, of course, we have the winner take all championship at Lone Depot Park in Miami, Florida. I think it's a good start to just go after and look at each individual team. We can start with Team Cuba, who I think is the prohibitive favorite here. They're led by guys like Yoan Moncada. They're led by guys like Luis Robert. They have a good overall team, but in my opinion, Pool A seems like the best balance of power, right? There's some huge favorites in the other 3 pools, but this might be the most fascinating pool because it seems like a lot of the teams are pretty balanced.
I definitely agree. I think Cuba's probably got the upper hand advantage. I'm glad MLB players are able to play this year. They haven't been able to in the past. So I think just getting Luis Robert out there, he's a big MVP caliber. I think you had that quote the other day, and I just was blown away when I played him in Double A and continued to watch him kind of in the big league. So I'm very excited to watch him. I think like even Team Italy, like I was talking to David Fletcher and just like, what do you expect from your team? He's like, I think we're gonna be able to hit. And it's really just got to be able to save the bullpen, especially in these early games. Everybody I've talked to is kind of like, we got to save our pitching because after the first game, if you use 6, 7 guys, like that bullpen's not really in mid-season form. They're not able to do back-to-backs right now and just those different things. So everybody I've talked to is like, we got to save our pitching. Hopefully we can get some length from starters if they're built up. But I think the biggest thing is just saving the bullpen and hoping the bats come alive.
So you spoke about Team Italy, and I want to talk about them in a little bit. I think a sleeper, maybe not a sleeper because they do have a good team, but the Netherlands, the Dutch, they have Xander Bogaerts. They have a good overall team. I guess my one worry is, of course, pitching.
Yes.
Because when we talk about the starting rotation, we talk about the bullpen a little bit. It's not maybe as strong as the Cuban team or maybe some other teams kind of in this, same bracket, but they do have some power bats. Even a guy who I think played over in the MPB, he's an outfielder. His name is it starts with a W, Ballantine. Vladimir
Yes,
Ballantine.
I want to say I
home runs in a single
yes.
season.
I want to say I played him like early in my like lower minors before he went over. I think that name sounds super familiar. That, or I'm just remembering him hitting 60 home runs.
Yeah,
but I think this group is definitely it's very challenging for the Dutch. I think with just the pitching, but Xander Bogaerts is going to be the team captain. He's going to be kind of the face of that, and I think he's going to rally that group. And I think the lineup's good enough, and defensively they're going to play good enough. It really comes down to pitching.
Yeah, it does come down to pitching. Like a pitcher that you might recognize, Pedro Strop. He's in there. I don't know if he's going to be coming out of the rotation, but I know he's been a great bullpen arm for a couple of different teams.
He's going to be bullpen just based off of his history and just, hey, we're going to give you the 8th or the 9th inning and just go shut it down.
I was thinking Strub could be like a opener, like how the Rays do it every day. It seems like
every day. It seems
every so like he might go like 2 to 3 innings to start, just get him off to a good start. But that's one of the more recognizable names. But Team Italy, again, you were talking to your teammate David Fletcher, like he's got to be really excited for this team because they have some good players.
Yes, he was very excited, and he was more nervous for the flight, I think, than playing in the games. Actually, he was like, I don't know what I'm going to do for 17 hours on that flight over there, and I think it was just kind of funny. But his biggest concern was they didn't have a ton of power bats. I think they had some guys drop out that really were going to bring some power to that offense, and so he was more of like, we're going to have to put together ABs. We're going to have to grind it out. We're going to have to move guys. We're going to actually have to play a little bit of small ball and not just worry about, oh, so-and-so is going to hit a home run here. We're going to be fine. So I think it's kind of locking in on defense. He was talking about the arms in his bullpen and just being very confident in them because he was like, they might not be well known in the MLB aspect, but he was like, they're throwing 97 still. He's like, they might be in AAA, but he's like, it plays. And I think like from high A all the way to the big leagues, if you're throwing 97, it plays. And I think that's just the biggest thing. And I think a lot of people, it's baseball and it's going to be a one game. Anything can happen. So you get to the starter and you score 3 runs and then your guy's on that day. Yeah. Anything can happen. So I think that's the biggest thing. But he was just big on, we got to collect some hits together and just put some runs across the board.
So Nicky Lopez is, I think, going to be on that team, right? Or at least he was listed on the roster. But I think the most exciting player on Team Italy plays for the Kansas City Royals. And I really hope, because you said they might have lost some power bats, I'm really hoping that Vinny Pasquantino is actually playing for Team Italy. I don't know if you've seen him in spring training, but last year he came up and like his back end data, like his batted ball profile is insane. Similar zone contact percentages to like Jeff McNeil, like walking almost every day. Like he has crazy power. I know a lot of Royals fans are really excited about him. We ranked him pretty high on our top 10 first base list on the Just Baseball show and on justbaseball.com. If you want to check out that list, like we are very big fans of, I think he's called the Italian Breakfast. The Italian Breakfast, I think is his nickname or something like that.
Okay.
But Vinny Pasquantino is a guy to know. Have you come across him? I know he's really, really young. I think he had a short cameo in the bigs last year.
I came up there in the Braves organization, so we never played any of the Kansas City teams. I think Lexington was one in low A, but like I never played them like personally. It was one of the one teams in the South Atlantic League that we didn't play, and I was kind of like, why didn't we play the? I think they were the Lexington Legends. Yeah, yeah. And I think that was kind of like the weirdest thing of like you play some teams in the minor leagues, and then there's teams you do not play at all. Like I've played the Cubs a couple times. I played the Rays all the time. But then there was like Kansas City, the Diamondbacks, like played them like once. That's it. And so you like look at guys like I've never heard of this guy. But I think just like looking at it, I mean, the Italian breakfast, that's a good nickname. Like,
It's a good nickname.
wow, that is a good nickname. So I'm excited for him. I think Italy's going to bring they're a lot of experience. I think they've got a lot of big leaguers that know what to do. And as I'm reading your notes, it looks like Matt Harvey's going to be on that team too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's some good experience, to put it nicely.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
I wish we had the Dark Knight Matt Harvey from a couple years ago.
Yeah, but like now it's like it's more than a couple years ago. Like it's almost been not a decade, but what has it been, like 7-8 years since that?
Yeah, probably. I think I was in high school or college during that.
Yeah.
So yeah, but still, I think like even the name will bring a presence of in that clubhouse of like that's Matt
No
Harvey.
doubt.
Like I'm gonna follow him. I'm gonna see how he goes about his business and different things like that.
Only thing that stunk, they lost Jordan Romano. He pulled out.
Yes, I did. I did see that. Yeah, I was
Like
looking forward to watching that.
He's one of the best closers in Major League Baseball right now.
Yes,
But I want to give you my pitch for the biggest sleeper in this pool. Because as we both said, I think there's a lot of good teams in this pool, and it might be the most entertaining just because of the balance.
Mm-hmm.
But when balance comes, chaos follows. And Chinese Taipei, back in 2013, they were ranked 5th in the world. They're a really cohesive unit. This is a team that's been playing together for a really long time. They also have home field advantage because it's begun a relative home field advantage because it's going to be played in Taichung City, Taiwan. So they have relative home field advantage. They have Yu Chang, who is an established big leaguer. They have the Chinese Baseball Professional League MVP in Li Lin. They have some good guys, but it's really a cohesive team. Like you've played on the Braves, now you're on the Angels. You know, you can look at a stat sheet and say, oh, this guy's really talented. You could look at the miles per hour on a fastball and say, this guy throws gas. But there has to be something to a team that plays together, especially in a format like this. I think Chinese Taipei could be the team to make it out of this pool.
It wouldn't shock me. I think teams that always like play together, I always joked about it when like you were younger. And if you like your club team went on to play in high school together, you just had such a good vibe of already. Everybody knows everybody, the pitchers and the catchers know everybody. There's no, hey, what do you throw when you're like throwing your first bullpen together? It's kind of like, I know exactly what this guy's going about his business, how he's going to do it. He likes pitch on the inner third, just whatever the case may be. So I'm not shocked that that's your sleeper pick at all, because I think they're going to be well trained, well disciplined, and ready to make some noise because they're rolling into this in a pool that if they win a couple games, they're advancing. It's not like, oh, we got to worry about the Dominican or whoever, the United States. It's like, no, we win 1 or 2 games and we're right back in there.
And Team Panama is the last team in this pool. And they have some pretty good players. I know Christian Bethancourt is their catcher, who was the catcher last year for the Rays. But Jaime Barria is a guy on the Angels, and he's probably going to be on Team Panama. Have you spoken to him about maybe the excitement surrounding the team? I know a lot of people like John Morosi. He came on MLB Network and was talking about Team Panama, kind of like the way I was talking about Chinese Taipei, just as a team not really anyone's paying attention to, but could end up making some noise. Have you spoken to Barria kind of about the chances of Panama?
I just kind of talked to him. It was just like, how are you feeling about it and everything? And his big thing was like, I think we're going to be able to pitch the ball pretty well. And he was like, that's really the biggest strength he said that they had. He was like, I'm really big on our pitching, hitting. We're going to have to do some damage. He's like, we're going to have to take advantage whenever we get into the big opportunities. So he was big on that. And I think he's going to get to start a little bit because he's been getting stretched out. He's competing for the 6th spot as well. So I think he's going to start, and he was looking forward to it. I think he leaves this weekend. Everybody's kind of leaving this weekend if they haven't already left. So he's looking forward to it. And I think it would be, if I had to pick, I'm going to go Cuba, Italy, Chinese, Netherlands, Panama, honestly.
Interesting.
So
you have Cuba coming out of the pool.
I do. I think that I think they're going to be pretty good. I think they got enough superstar power to kind of lead them the way. I think Luis Robert is, if you I don't know if they give MVPs in these for the pools,
Freak
but I think
talent.
he's going to be the MVP. He really is. I mean, we all compared him
So
to
is
kind of like the Mike
Mancada.
Trout. Yeah, Mancada's incredible too.
Yeah.
That little Chicago White Sox coming up when I was in the minors was unbelievable with him, C's, Moncada, Luis Robert. It was just unbelievable. So I think Cuba's going to come out of it strong. I think they've got enough MVP power to kind of just overwhelm some of those teams.
I'm putting my name on the line. Give me Chinese Taipei.
I
All right,
love
let's
it. I love
let's
the pick.
let's move over to Pool B. And this pool is, with all due respect to the other 4 teams in the pool, this is the Japan pool.
Yes.
Japan is the prohibitive favorite, and their team is crazy. Their team
Yeah.
is crazy. So for Japan on the pitching side, I would argue it might be the best overall pitching in the WBC, even though only 2 guys are currently major leaguers. Obviously, Shohei Ohtani, the best player in the world, is on Team
Yes.
Japan. He's going to be heading the rotation. Following him is Yu Darvish. Yeah, he's pretty good too. He pitches on the
Yeah, that
Padres,
guy's
just
pretty
signed
good.
an enormous
Yeah.
extension. And then, but guys, I'm really excited to watch. Roki Sasaki, young phenom, touching
Cannot
100
wait.
miles an hour. Yeah, I think he's, what is he? Did he throw back-to-back no-hitters or something nuts like
He
that?
went like perfect game, 18 strikeouts, and then backed it up with a no hitter with like 15 or something. Well, sitting 98 to
And
102
he's
with
20.
Yeah, he's 20. I even asked like Shohei, and he goes, he's really good. And I'm just like, okay. And Shohei even said he's like that. He might be the best like Japanese pitcher right now, like this minute. And I was like, even over you. And he was like, like kind of like one of those. And I was like, all right, we'll see how he does when he gets over the States.
Yeah, I think Shohei at least has a right to say, pump the brakes. I might be one of the better offensive players, but I might be even better at pitching. Like, that's just how good he is. But a guy who I think is sort of flying under the radar just because of how loaded Team Japan is, not because he's not anything special, Yoshinobu Yamamoto. This guy is 24 years old now. So from ages 22 to 23 in the MPB, the dude has put up a 1.54 ERA with over 400 strikeouts and 386 innings, back-to-back Cy Youngs. I think it's called the E.G. Sawamura Award in the MPB.
That's right.
This guy is a stud, and he's the 4 starter. Like, he's like, I mean, this rotation is, like, you put this rotation right now in Major League Baseball, it is one of the better rotations in Major League Baseball.
Oh, it's
at least that's what I think. I saw Yoshinobu, he's throwing 91 mile an hour splitters. Like, what are these guys doing? What are they eating over there?
I don't know. It's more of, I want to know how they throw their splitters so hard, because generally most Americans that throw splitters, they're 85 tops. I feel like every Japanese pitcher that comes over, they throw 91 mile an hour splitters. And I'm just like, how do you throw it so hard? I'm trying to throw a splitter, and I'm like, I Shohei, I was like, how do you throw it harder? He goes, he's like, it just started coming out harder one day. I was like, okay, that doesn't help. But I guess he does throw 100 whenever he wants.
I have 2 hypotheses. I think that's how you say it. I have 2 of those, and I want to run this by you too. One is, it does seem that every Japanese starter comes over throwing a splitter or some sort of forkball. Like, it's when we're all grown up playing baseball. Like, I grew up and played high school baseball, and now I talk about baseball, so obviously I wasn't that good at it. But they start, like, when we start throwing curveballs or changeups, and as sliders usually come down the line. Like, you don't see like 9-year-olds throwing sliders, maybe a curveball, maybe a changeup. But I think their first off-speed pitch is normally the splitter or the forkball. And then also the ball in the MPB is a little bit smaller. It's slight, but it's a little bit smaller. I think it's a combination of those things, because Yamamoto, he's maybe touching 91 with the slider in the MPB, but maybe comes over to 89 or something like that. Is that something that makes sense? Is that something that you've heard?
The biggest thing I've heard of guys coming over to the States is the slickness of the MLB ball. It's a cue ball. I'll be honest, it's a cue ball. Yeah. And you get the Olympic ball or the Japanese ball, there's a little bit of tack to it, and it's a little bit smaller. So I think that's the biggest adjustment. Most Japanese pitchers, I don't know if this is true or not, this is what I feel. The first year they kind of struggle, and I think it's getting used to the ball and just like the different playing atmosphere, because there's a lot of things going on, and like the Japanese, like it's very big things going on all the time. And I've heard that from the Latin American, just like the crowd's a little bit different versus here we've got a lot of like video board stuff going all over the place of like make some noise. Like that's not really a thing in Japan. It's more of the crowds doing chants themselves and doing different things. Or the Latin America, they're beating on drums or whatever the case is to create the crowd noise versus in America, they shoot it up on the scoreboard and it's like make some noise, make some noise. So that was the biggest thing I've heard is the change. And then really the balls. Every pitcher I've heard is like they go to throw the pitch and it feels like it slips out and it's wet to them.
Yeah, and we have a lot of Japanese, pitchers starting in Major League Baseball this year, whether Kodai Senga with the Mets or Shintaro Fujinami with the Oakland A's. Like, I'm really excited to see these guys, but there's always the growing pains, right? You're traveling,
Yes.
across the world, playing in a completely new environment with
Culture shock,
new
yeah.
players. Like, for example, I assume like the Mets and the A's, they have data on players, but there's a language barrier too. Like Ichiro offensively came over and just hit the ground running. But even a guy like Shohei, when he first came over, right, wasn't he dealing with a little bit of the injury bug? He wasn't quite the Shohei. And then 2021, he literally went crazy. And then 2022, he did basically the same thing again. But there's always that learning curve. So maybe as you sit here today, you probably see the talent of Senga and Fujinami on the Mets and the A's, but you're not expecting them. Don't expect them to have the same stats as they did in the MPB, which is totally fine.
Right.
Like Seiya Suzuki came over and he was like 1,000 OPS guy in the MPB. He comes over 770, but next year he'll probably be better. It just takes a little while, but these guys are still so talented.
Yeah, I think under a 4.5 in your first year coming over to the States is honestly a big pat on the back of just like a lot of times the Japanese pitchers are throwing on 6 days over in Japan. They come over to America, it's a 5-day. That's a completely new schedule of how you got to prepare your body. You've obviously got to have a translator. You're doing different things. You're traveling across the country. You got East Coast, different time chains. I don't even know if there are time chains and changes in Japan. I have no idea. So I don't know if that's like a factor of like, or why are we on East Coast one time, West Coast, Central? It's just kind of different. So maybe that has something to do with it.
Another team in the pool, Korea. Tommy Edman is going to be on the Korean team.
Yes.
Ha-Seong Kim. So, I mean, imagine that middle infield, like no balls getting past those two.
No.
And then they have Kwang Hyun Kim, who, if I'm not mistaken, lefty. I think he's been in the bigs for a little bit, maybe up and down, but I do remember that name. This team, at least from what I've seen, has a lot of people thinking they're like the big team to watch, kind of not the prohibitive favorite, which they're kind of graded as, but people are kind of calling them an underdog. They're kind of in this weird position where I think everybody knows they're good, but are they good enough to beat a team like Japan? I just don't think so. That's why I call this Japan's pool. It's no disrespect to Korea. If Korea was in pool A, they might come out of that pool. If they were in a different pool, they might. But it's just Japan is so loaded. Like, have you heard anything about Korea?
I really haven't. I know more about Australia just because I have Aaron Whitefield on my team, so he's playing center field for him, and that's really about it. Korea, yeah, it is Japan's pool to lose. I think that's the biggest challenge for this entire pool is how are you going to compete against them? Are you going to face Shohei Ohtani or Yu Darvish? And those probably, I would assume, they're going to be the first two guys to throw for them at least, just because they're going to want to be, their teams are here, going to want them to be on similar schedule. That way, when they advance and they go on to play, they're ready to go in 5-6 days, whatever the case may be. But I think it's more of, can you get to one of the Japanese starters and can you hold that offense? And I think Australia has a good chance to do that. Korea, I think they're going to be able to hit the ball, but it's just, are you getting Shohei that night? And is Shohei on? Does he go 4 innings or does he going to throw 50 pitches in 8 innings? Because I'm sure he could do that.
And that's why Japan is so deadly, because let's say it's not Shohei. You want to deal with Darvish? Yes. You want to deal with Roki Sasaki? You want to deal with Yamamoto? It's like there's no off days. With other teams, like you can find kind of the off days where, all right, now we got to turn the bats on today. You don't really have a shot. Like, I love Japan. We're going to talk about, who might win the whole thing, but Japan is definitely one of my favorites. Moving on to Australia, I'll leave the floor open to you. What have you heard about them?
I played with John Kennedy a couple years ago. He was a 6'7" left-handed pitcher from Australia. And I think he's playing, I want to say he was on the roster. If not, he was like an alternate. But he was always talking about years ago of just like the difference between going over and playing Japan and Korea was the amount of depth that they have versus Australia. So I feel like that was the biggest thing that Australia is going to lack is just the depth of. Say the starter gets knocked out in the second, they're going to have to. They're really got their work cut out for them. So they're going to need length out of the starters. I think the bats are going to be a little bit there. I'm a little worried. Just I'm going to go back to the Japan thing, but I think if they go up against like China or the Czech Republic, I think they're going to come out with that win just out of those two. I don't know who they play the first game, but I think just overall they're going to be a good defensive team, but it's going to come down to just their depth pitching wise.
And then what Japan has to deal with is teams like China and Czech Republic,
Yes.
who like Australia and Korea can probably go, bang for bang. They can hit with them or at least make it a competitive game. My issue, and I hate to be rude, but China and Czech Republic don't really do anything for me. I don't really see any big league talent. There's some minor leaguers in there, but they're like far off minor leaguers.
Right.
It's just they're gonna have some fun. They're gonna have some fun.
That might be like a tune-up game, just kind of, hey, Darvish, you got 3 innings today. We're really wanting you to get locked in. So when we go to Miami and we have to face the Dominican, we want you to pitch that game. So it might be, hey, get your 3 innings of work and then you're done. Don't worry about anything else. We've got it all covered. And I think it's going to be one of those of that's the day that they need to get their bats rolling. Whenever they play China, they need to get going in there and be like, we need to put up 15 and make a statement that we're not here to mess around. And then we want to win this.
We'll see. This is the USA pool. Have you seen their lineup? Have you seen the Finnish lineup yet?
No, I haven't. What is it?
It is nuts. Trey Turner's at short. Yeah, he's pretty good. Mookie Betts is in right field. Yeah, he's all right. Mike Trout. Yeah. Paul Goldschmidt.
Yeah, that guy's kind of good. That
Yep.
guy's really good.
Pete Alonso, who had 131 RBIs, tied Aaron Judge last year. Kyle Tucker hit 6th. Could be an MVP candidate this year. Nolan Arenado. Ever heard of him? Yeah. Catcher. Who's the best catcher in the world, probably? J.J. Realmuto? Yeah.
Yes.
United States has got him. And maybe the best second baseman, maybe second after Altuve? Yeah, they have Jeff McNeil, too.
Yes.
I mean, this team is crazy.
No
but
holes.
would you say pitching is a slight hole with this team? Because obviously there's no hole with Clayton Kershaw. But Adam Wainwright, that Wainwright in these big moments is probably going to come through. So I wouldn't call that a hole. But in spring training, he's 86. I don't know if he's working on something. That could be just an Adam Wainwright. I just got to see the strike zone and just kind of hit my spots, and then I'll ramp it up later. But Brady Singer, Michaelis, Lance Lynn, I'm holding them to another standard now. The USA, I'm comparing them to Dominican Republic and Japan. So if I'm splitting hairs and saying, oh, the hole is pitching, it's just the hole compared to the other greatest teams in the world.
I agree.
Overall, this team is incredible from top to bottom. Brady Singer was so good for the Royals last year, and I think he's going to keep going. He was a big start, Florida, first round draft pick, and just really got locked in. And then you got Lance Lynn, who's just yelling F you on the field after he just feeds you only fastballs. This team is going to be so exciting. I can't wait to watch it. But if I had to nitpick, it'd be the pitching.
I think the bullpen's better in the starting rotation just because I think I think it is. I mean, you got Dylan Tate out there and he's going to probably throw it the 5th, 6th inning because it's going to be unbelievable. But I think Adam Wainwright's going to be kind of the backbone of just I'm going to ride us, give me 4 innings. And then that's kind of the thing with this lineup. You only need, if you give up 3 runs, it's going to be okay.
Yeah, they're going to score 7.
Yeah, they're going to score 7. So I think even going in, all right, we can keep this 9 innings under 5 runs. We're going to win every single time because that lineup is going to produce. They're going to go on a long inning, and all of a sudden it's going to go Trey Turner hits base hit, and then he's still second, and then Mookie Drive hits a double. And then Goldschmidt's right behind, and then Trout, and then go back, and then it's 5-0, and you're like, what just happened? So I think that's the biggest thing, and I think that's probably the way they went was let's have the best lineup, and then let's have a really good bullpen, and then let's see what starting pitchers. I was expecting a little bit more, maybe a Verlander or DeGrom or Scherzer, and so I don't know if big contracts came into play or agents or teams were no. So I don't know how that came into play and just that different thing. But I really kind of expected, especially after the last one, seeing Stroman really balled out in that last one and then became huge superstar after that. I was expecting to see maybe some more like superstars that we are more well known, kind of, hey, I'm going to be the anchor, I'm going to be the ace of the rotation, but it ended up not happening. But I still am very excited about the arms that they brought.
You share a locker room with Mike Trout. Has he said anything about the team yet?
And I mean, he knows how good that team is and how that lineup, because he'll like joke like, you see that lineup? Like it's the Dodgers, and then it's like Dodgers best lineup in baseball, whatever you want to call them, and then it's like, oh yeah, we like tripled the Dodgers lineup with just like JT Realmuto, Paul Goldschmidt. It's like you just pick, oh, what position you want? I want that guy, and it's like, yeah, I'll play. So very excited about that. But he's been very excited. I think he's really excited to like get there and just be around those guys and kind of just be like, hey, let's go win this.
Absolutely. Moving on to the next teams. Team Mexico is sneaky. Team Mexico is, I think, the underdog of this World Baseball Classic.
I agree.
Think of it like this, Tuck. Team Mexico is arguably the best pitcher in the pool in Julio Urias. Was second in NL Cy Young voting last year, has been to the playoffs with the Dodgers, and it's just been a dog in the playoffs. Like, we need a bubble on Savant that is like the X-dog in him, because Urias is at 100 on the Baseball Savant bubbles. But they lost Alejandro Kirk, which stinks.
Yes.
But familiarity, who's the backup? Austin Barnes.
Yeah.
So that's a good pairing. And of course, they have your teammate Patrick Sandoval in the rotation. They have Taijuan Walker, who's now for the Phillies, and Jose Urquidy for the Astros. And then them in the bullpen, they have one of the best relievers in Major League Baseball, and Giovanni Gallegos being the closer.
Yes.
And then Luis Sessa, who's been like a spot starter, but is a really good bullpen arm. He was on the Yankees. Now he's on the Reds. He's going to kind of handle the setup duties. And the lineup isn't as crazy as the United States.
It's a pretty good lineup, though.
Randy Arozarena, Luis Arias, Jonathan Aranda, Joey Meneses on the Nationals, Alex Verdugo, Jaron Duran, Alec Thomas, Alan Trejo on the Rockies. Like, they have a full major league team on offense. And I would say they have better pitching than the Team USA. Like, how is Patrick thinking about this?
He's very confident in it, and he's like, I think we're going to give US like a run for money. I think Julio's going to start that game, and then I don't know if they're going to piggyback with Sandoval, because I think they were talking about that early on. I don't know if Sandoval's going to get his own game now or whatever that's going to end up actually happening. But he was very confident of just like, I don't know who they play. I think they might play Canada first game, and then they play the United States, and he's like, he thinks they should be able to beat Canada. And then he's like, going in the United States, I think they're going to have enough like confidence, swagger, and just like, this is David versus Goliath right now. Let's go punch them in the mouth. We know all these guys. Let's go beat them in like sold out crowd. I can't even get a ticket. I've been trying to get a ticket for 2 weeks right now. Sandoval's like, dude, I already bought like 20 tickets for my whole family. I'm like, okay, I'll try to find some other way. But he's very excited and he's confident, and that lineup's not bad. Like, I'm looking at it like Verdugo, like incredible hitter. Luis Arias, great hitter. Jonathan Aranda, can't get him out ever. And I think it's just one of those like.
And then you have playoff Randy in the spotlight.
Playoff Randy, yes, in the spotlight where he really loves to shine. So I think just that lineup's going to be good. They're definitely my sleeper. I think if they could make some noise and beat the U.S., and that would really start turning some heads around.
I kind of think they do, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. When we pick our winner, what Team Mexico has, because you said David and Goliath. David's beaten Goliath both in 2006, 2006, and 2013. So they have history there. And something that I found that was really cool. So obviously it's being played in the United States, whether it's in Arizona or Florida, right? The last time these two teams played, like 2006 and 2013, it was in Arizona, and the crowd was 70% Team Mexico fans. They are loud. And it's almost going to feel like a home field environment for Team Mexico. Obviously, you can't predict what kinds of fans, but looking at past history, they have filled up the stadium, and they've beaten them twice in these games. So they have the upper hand thinking, yeah, it's David versus Goliath because you have the United States, and it looks like an all-world team, basically, because it's like, or an all-MLB team because you're picking all the best players basically in Major League Baseball. But Team Mexico maybe doesn't have that top-end firepower. But in one game, I have Julio Urias, and I have like home field advantage, and I got playoff Randy, and I got a team that's confident going into it. USA is on upset alert, dude.
Yes, I agree. I will agree on that game. Upset alert there for the United States.
Upset alert there for the United States. And then going further into the pool, I think Canada does have a shot, though, to knock off Team Mexico. Of course, one of my favorite players, Kyle Quantrill for the Guardians. He's on the team. They have Freddie Freeman there with Canada. Like, they have some good top end guys. Losing Nick Pivetta, though, for the rotation was tough.
Yeah, that does hurt.
So it's like, yes, they just don't have the talent that Team Mexico and Team USA does. But it's another one of these scrappy teams that you don't look through the lineup and see a ton of stars, but you see top end guys that could, like a guy like Freddie Freeman could win a game by himself. Cal Quantrill could just throw 6 shutty. And like, what are you going to do? Like, they just beat you. So it's like one of those teams that if you get them in the right spot, they can be really dangerous.
I agree with that. Canada, they're very exciting. I think Freddie's going to win a game for them. I think he's going to go 3 for 3 one game with a home run, and they're going to win like 2-0 or something like that. And just had a really good game. And they just pitched well. They did everything right. And then they had one of the best first basemen in baseball do his thing.
There you go. I would, for my money, Freddie's the best, even over Goldschmidt, even though he won the NL MVP. But that's for another discussion for another time.
Colombia, that is a tough discussion.
Yeah, Colombia and Great Britain. With all due respect to Great Britain, they don't really have anybody. Colombia, though, they do have some players.
Yes.
I would put Canada above them. I really would. I do think this is going to be between Mexico and the United States. But is there anything that you've heard about Colombia that makes you think, hey, they could be a little bit sneaky?
I think their pitching's going to be a little bit better than we're going to give them credit for. I think
like they have big leaguers. Yes, they have big leaguers. Like they have Gio Urshela.
They're just in a loaded bracket where it's like, oh, you don't have 10 big names across your lineup or in your rotation. So I think that's might be their factor. But again, they're going to be able to pitch. They're going to be able to hit the ball a little bit. It's more the depth thing. That's what I'm getting to these smaller countries that aren't as equipped with all these MLB superpowers. It's more of how is the depth? Is the drop off after the starter gets out? What is it going to be like? Where's the bridge guy? How's the setup guy going to be? But as I know how baseball works, there's always going to be a guy for each team that throws 97 and it's going to play and he's going to punch out 5 in 2 innings. And it's going to be like, who is this guy? And I'm like, oh, he's in AAA with the Pirates. And you're like, never heard of him before. I'm like, you will. And that's what's so much fun about the WBC. One thing I do see a slight path for them to winning, Jose Quintana. I mean, he's a great pitcher. He's great last year. And he's now pitching for the Mets. They also have Reiver Sanmartin, who's on the Reds. Stint as a starter, truthfully, was terrible. But once he moved into the bullpen, really, really good. So he could be a guy where Quintana goes 5, and then Reiver Sanmartin goes 2 innings or something like that. Right.
And they can make it through the ball game. And they have Gio Urshela. They have Donovan Solano. At catcher, they have Jorge Alfaro. So they have guys. They're not Canada with the top end, but they have guys.
Yeah, you're getting the back end of Julio Teheran's career. I mean, you're not getting a 24-year-old stud in Atlanta that he was. You're getting the back end of that. So I think that's where they're kind of at. But I think they're going to be one of those teams that you can't just like sleep around. And that's just, I think the biggest thing of this tournament is if you're the better team, you got to put them away. You can't let these teams kind of hang out. And then it's 7th inning and it's a 2-3 game. And all of a sudden somebody hits a double and then they go back and they hit a backside home run. And all of a sudden it's like, we just lost and we should have won. Because on paper, the United States should win and the Mexico should be coming in second.
Pool D has the Dominican Republic. So when we were fawning over the United States lineup, let me read you the Dominican Republic lineup. Julio Rodriguez in center. Juan Soto in left. Vladdy at first. Rafi Devers at DH because they have Machado at third. Wander Franco is probably going to play some second base because they have Willie Adames at short. Then you put in Teoscar Hernandez and then Gary Sanchez at catcher. But did you hear the news about Vladdy?
I did not.
Might be a little bit banged up. Is currently questionable to be in the World Baseball Classic. And there has been kind of some noise about people say the USA has pitching problems, but people say that the Dominican Republic have pitching problems. And I don't understand that. I can understand about the United States. It's a couple of older guys, but they still have good pitching. But the Dominican Republic is going to have Sandy Alcantara starting game one, who just
Yes.
won the unanimous Cy Young in the National League. Then following him, they have Christian Javier through a no-hitter in the World Series. Then following him is Royancy Contreras, who has some of the best stuff of any young pitcher in Major League Baseball for the Pirates. Why are people saying that they're weak on pitching? I don't understand it.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, I think Johnny Cueto is going to have the best outing of all of them because he's
There
the
you go.
veteran and he's going to know everybody in that lineup what to do. He's going to shimmy on him. He doesn't have a pitch clock to worry about, and he's going to do fine. But yes, I think the pitching is definitely better in the United States. The lineup's crazy, and you left somebody out there, and he was the World Series MVP, and he might be sitting on the bench at some point.
That's what I'm
Which
saying.
Is unbelievable.
What do they
Pena
do?
might be on the bench. Yeah.
What do they do? So Willie Adames, Wander Franco, Jeremy Pena, and then they also have like Ketel Marte and Jeet Segura.
Yes.
What do you do? I don't know what to do.
Whoever's hitting good, I guess, is going to play that night. But I mean, their bullpen is ridiculous too. I mean, Brian Abreu, I don't think let up a run like the second half of last year. Diego Castillo, I'm just Gregory Soto.
Like
Garcia. Who's going to pitch the ninth? Yeah, who's going to pitch the ninth? I mean, you got 5 closers on here, and
Gregory Soto even. Remember him on the Tigers, and he's on the
Carlos
Phillies now?
Estevez is going to be our closer this year, and he's
great.
He's going to pitch the 6th inning?
Yeah. I mean, we're laughing because it's funny how good they are. Like the United States, I think the United States actually, if Vladdy is banged up, I think you can make the argument that the United States lineup is better, but just from a team, from a roster standpoint, is this not the best World Baseball Classic team you've ever seen, at least from a roster standpoint?
Yeah, I think it is. I think just hands down, or it's like, tell me a hole, and I'm like, when I find one, I'll let you know. It's one of those bullpen loaded, starting rotation loaded. You got the Cy Young winner from last year. You got great catchers, great infielders, great outfielders. Yeah, they're going to be very tough to beat. And I think it's one of those of you hope you get on the board early off of one of the starters and then just pray the bullpen has an off night.
The other team in this pool, Venezuela, they're also loaded at catcher. Salvador Perez and Omar Narvaez is certainly going to work. But in the infield, guys like Altuve, Luis Arraez, who's now on the Miami Marlins, Andres Jimenez, who just put up a 6-WAR season for the Guardians, kind of out of nowhere. But then they also have guys like Miguel Cabrera, who is going to be such an important person in that dugout. Guys like Gleyber Torres, Eduardo Escobar, Eugenio Suarez, Luis Rengifo on the Angels. Yes. Like this Venezuelan team, they have to be so excited because, of course, you also have Ronald Acuna Jr. in your outfield.
Yes.
But do you know what's kind of been happening with Venezuela in the past couple WBCs? Like, has Rengifo kind of told you what's been happening? Because Puerto Rico is a team that's kind of always beat them in this format. A team like Dominican Republic has always beat them. But this Venezuela team has so much talent. I don't know if you've heard from Rengifo, maybe just like your own opinion on it. Do you think this is finally the year that Venezuela takes down the DR, or is the DR just too strong?
DR might be too strong, but if there is a Venezuelan team to do it, it's definitely this team. And I think they're the second best team in this pool, even over Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico's pretty loaded. But just like from Altuve to Miguel Cabrera to their starters to their bullpen, they're pretty stacked as far as what they've been in the past. So I definitely think this is the best team that they've produced in the last couple of years. So excited for that. And just Acuna, he's gonna be on one because he's gonna want to be able to show out. He's gonna be in a big environment. It's gonna be that Latin American vibe in Miami, and he's gonna enjoy it and want to be the superstar that he is. So I'm expecting big things out of Acuna.
In Puerto Rico, led by Francisco Lindor, and we all remember this is why Puerto Rico is must watch, and not even because they're also loaded with big leaguers, but Javier Baez, I think, kind of became a star from the World Baseball Classic back in 2017.
It was the tag.
It was the tag. Like those two up the middle is, I think, as must watch, even over like the United States has a great up the middle duo. So does the Dominican Republic. But in terms of a flair, in terms of excitement, Puerto Rico might be the most exciting team from a visual standpoint in the World Baseball Classic.
Yeah, just that Latin flair up the middle is just going to be so beautiful to watch. I just want to see all the double plays turn, just walk them or get a base hit and then just roll ground balls to them. That's all we want to see. And then obviously I think that tag thing for Javi Baez was kind of like the stepping stone to like
Yeah.
put him on a new level. Because I mean, he's not even looking, pointing at the catcher and just like, I got you. And yeah, it's just unbelievable. But I think they're gonna be a tough team to beat. Just I think they're a little hungry, I think, from the last WBC too, of just like wanting to make a name for themselves again. And I think just the biggest thing is they're going to want to take down the Dominican, and they're going to be throwing everything they got at them. They're going to be trying all different things. And I think that's going to be some crazy, like wacky baseball. It's not just going to be a typical thing. They're going to be trying hit and runs, button guys over, trying to do stuff to get the ball or get the bat back to Acuna at the top of the lineup, and just different things. But I'm excited for, not, excuse me, Acuna, Lindor, and just like enjoying like being there and facing Venezuela and Dominican. They're going to go off. So I'm excited.
They're going to go off. My thoughts are this pool seems to be the best pool of any of them. I know Pool C has Mexico and the United States, but when you have the DR, Venezuela, and Puerto Rico in the same pool, I'm kind of upset because I think all three of these teams, if they were separated differently, we could all potentially see them in the title game. And it just kind of stinks for Israel and Nicaragua that they just got thrown in this freaking mayhem of just loaded teams who are all going after each other. And then you have Israel and Nicaragua. And I don't want to diminish these two teams, but it's just at some point, it's like there's a different in talent level.
Yes.
It's like in college baseball when an LSU faces a Lipscomb. Like there's just it's a different talent. Could any team win on any given day? Of course they could.
Yes.
Like Major League Baseball, it's way different because it's the world champion Astros against the Nationals of last year. They're all big league teams. Any team can win on any given day. They're all professional athletes. Anyone can win. But in formats like this, when a team is like an all-star team of those professionals versus a team who has like one, that's the tough part. But is there anything about Israel or Nicaragua that you want to touch on before we pick some winners out of these pools?
I expect Jock Peterson to do something kind of cool. I think it's really cool that he's playing for Team Israel. I think he's going to bring some type of flair to that. And I think he's kind of going to get him on the, hey, we can beat these guys. And especially I think they play the Dominican. So they're going to be big on like, let's take them down. Like they're the big guys. Let's go out and do it. Zach Wise is on my team, and I just kind of like asked him, was like, what do you got on it? It's like, I think if we pitch well enough, I think we can surprise enough people with the bats. He goes, I'm a little worried if it's 3-0, 2-0, whatever the case is, late in the game, and you get to the Dominican's bullpen or Venezuela's bullpen, because he's like, I don't think we could compete and match up to them. But other than that, he was excited for it, and he's like, we might make some noise. He's like, any given day in baseball, especially in these games, anything can happen.
Love that. And that's why the World Baseball Classic is so awesome. So Pool A, your pick is Cuba, correct?
Yes.
My pick is Chinese Taipei. I'm going out a little bit. I'm going with Chinese Taipei. You got Cuba. And then I think we both have Japan coming out of Pool B.
Yes.
And I think we both have Japan beating either Cuba or Chinese Taipei.
Yes. I'm going to go with like a 15-1 game when they do play. Yes.
Yeah. That's why I think Japan has such a good shot of winning, because it just feels that their path to victory is a little bit easier than Team USA playing Mexico, than playing the DR. Like there's such a gauntlet in Pool C and Pool D. But what the Pool C and Pool D lacks in, what Pool A and Pool B lacks in talent, they have to make up for in travel, because they'll be traveling from Tokyo to Florida and then have that quick turnaround. Like you're a guy who's obviously traveled all over the country. You gotta, you fly in, you get ready, maybe get a good night's sleep, but then you pitch. Like how much do you think the travel will be an impact on these teams? Do you think it will matter at all? Or do you think it's a slight leg up for like the teams coming Pool C, Pool D, who just get to stay in Miami and Arizona and then play?
I think the teams that are staying in Miami, I think that's going to help them out a ton, because the flying is a huge aspect, especially like getting tied pitchers. It's like 15 hours from Japan over here. So it's not
flying from Atlanta to Los Angeles. It's flying from Tokyo, Japan to Florida. I mean, that's across the world.
It's a big jump, but I'm trying to figure out where jet lag is. And because I've had people who are like, I get to Japan and I'm like wide awake, ready to go. Huh. And then whenever I get back to the States is whenever I'm crushed for a week and can't get back on the system. So I'm wondering if they're going to fly over, be fine, but by the time the finals get is when they're going to be hit of like the jet lag after a couple days. So that's what I'm trying to figure out around this of how are they going to react? How are they going to be? Are they going to send half the team early, like pitchers early? Are they going to? Who knows how their travel is? Are they all flying first class? They have their own plane. Are they flying commercial? What is the travel like? Are they stopping somewhere, practicing for a day, and continuing it? That's what I really don't know. 15 hours on a plane does not sound fun.
That's why this podcast is awesome. I'm going to bring you the best baseball analysis I can possibly bring, but I can never answer that question. And that's a question that's been a guy who's traveled all over the country playing professional baseball now for a few years. Like for me, I could say, yeah, I was jet lagged and then I had to record a podcast. And I was kind of tired. I don't have to pitch in front of 50,000 people. It's a completely different thing. So me saying, oh, yeah, I'd be jet lagged. Yeah, no shit. On the plane, I'm eating like Cheetos and then I get in and I talk about baseball. It's a completely different thing. So hearing that, I totally agree. Maybe when Japan comes there, they roll and then it gets to the title game and they face a team Mexico, USA, Dominican Republic, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, and they get blown out, even if Shohei's on the mound because everyone comes out flat because they're jet lagged. That could be a real possibility, and we might see that unfold. But first, let's pick a winner out of team or Pool C and Pool D. So Mexico and United States, I think, should be the picks here. I think Canada has that late flare where they're a possibility and they should be considered here. But in my opinion, I'm going with Team Mexico. I think they pull the upset again. I know, I was born in Santa Barbara, California. I live in New York City. I am an American, and it's egregious for me to say, yeah, I'm picking against my own country. But here's how I thought about it. Here's how I rationalized it.
Okay.
If the United States wins, I'm going to be happy regardless. I'm going to be down there in Florida covering the WBC in the booth, or not in the, I'm not going to be in the booth, but I'm going to be covering, credentialed. So I'm going to be happy if they win. But if I get my pick right, say Mexico wins, I'm happy either way. Is that a pussy move to do? Am I doing that?
No.
Yeah, that's a good
it's not
move.
a
That's
bad
smart
move
guy
because it's like, hey, my pick is Mexico, and you want them to win. But at the end of the day, you're like, oh man, if US wins, I'm not gonna be mad.
I'm not gonna be upset. I'm gonna be ecstatic. So I'm gonna go with Mexico. I'm hedging happiness. Kind of when Guardians, Yankees, because I'm a big Guardians fan too. When they played each other, I was just like, I hope both teams have fun. Something like that. No, but so who's your pick? I'm going to infer you're going with the United States.
I'm going with the United States, but Mexico, I think, is going to be the other team.
You're already the podcast favorite, according to the listeners. I'm pretty sure. Coming out of Pool D, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Venezuela. I think this is the toughest one because now you have three. Pool C is tough because, of course, there's the top two who are really good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, three really good. No wrong answers, but how can we not go with the DR? I mean,
yeah, I'm definitely going DR for sure. And then I'm going to go with Venezuela. I think Jose Altuve is going to bring some magic to it.
No, but you only get to pick one winner. So yeah, those two are advanced.
Yeah.
But
those two,
the one winner coming out of that pool.
DR. I think they're just too much to handle. Sorry, Venezuela.
Okay, so now we have DR versus USA for you. For me, it's DR versus Team Mexico. Dominican Republic versus the United States. Who wins?
I'm going to go to the United States. I think that's when we're going to get our Wainwright game where he's going to go 6 innings shutty, punched out 5 or 6, and Mike Trout goes 3 for 3 with a double and 2 home runs. That's my prediction.
I wouldn't be me if I didn't believe in my underdog story, and I believe in Team Mexico. They've never won a title before, and I think they get past the Dominican Republic. I think it's going to be that might be the loudest stadium ever recorded. That might be the loudest stadium ever recorded.
I'm interested to hear the decibels of how loud it's going to be.
Like the big house in college football.
Yeah. Is it going to compare to some Premier League soccer games and stuff like that?
It's going to be absolutely electric. So you have the USA advancing. I have Team Mexico advancing.
Yes.
And then to face Japan. Is the USA beating Japan, Tucker?
Okay, so the number one question I've gotten from all the reporters this spring training has been Trout versus Shohei. Who's going to win that battle? Shohei's pitching, Trout's batting. And I go, and this is kind of the way I've said it. Fastball, Trout knows it's coming first pitch. He might get it. It's probably a 50-50. But if it gets to 2 strikes, I think Shohei's got his favor because he's got 5 pitches to go to, and one of them is a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. Another one's a best slider in baseball. The other one's a terrific splitter. So I think that's, oh man, I have to go United States because I just believe in them. I believe like what that lineup can do, and I think that lineup's good enough to knock out one of those starters. But I am worried about the starters from Japan of just how good they are and how locked in they can be, and they can just dismantle that United States lineup and just shut them down for 7 innings and then turn it over the bullpen. And the United States blinks. It's like, what just happened? So I think it's going to be a battle, but I'm going to go with the United States.
United States. All right. Right now I have Team Mexico versus Team Japan. So no country allegiance for me. I'm just going to look at, the guys on paper who I think is going to win. I've done a great job here of removing myself from country allegiance, which could either end up being a bad thing or a good thing. I'm going to go with Team Japan. They just have too much talent. And like they've been good in the WBC before. You got Shohei. I just can't get over the pitching because even if Shohei starting that game, let's say he does poorly, which he won't, but let's say he does because it's baseball and anything can happen. What if they throw Yu Darvish in after him? And then let's say Yu Darvish struggles. Well, they got Roki Sasaki coming in after. But a really exciting player on their offense that I'm really excited to watch. First, they got Lars Nootbaar. Like they have so many big leaguers on the Japanese team, but Munetaka Murakami, I think he's going to be the World Baseball Classic MVP. Ooh. As a 22-year-old in the MPB last year, he should be posted in about 2 years. He's like the next great power hitter coming over from the MPB. Munetaka Murakami hit 58 home runs in the MPB, beat Sadaharu O's single season record for home runs in the MPB. As a 22-year-old, Triple Crowns, MVPs. This guy is a freak. He's like what Roki is as a hitter. Except
is he the one that's been hitting all these home runs off of Darvish?
He is a freak. He is a freak. And he's like, Seiya was coming over. This guy has like similar or better numbers at a younger age. Like this guy is going to be really good. As a Yankee fan, I want him in pinstripes, but what are we going to do? Like, we're probably not going to get him because he's going to cost. Yeah, we never know. But as like, that's a guy who I'm on the lookout, who I think is going, you're going to turn on the TV, watch Team Japan, and you'll see this third baseman be like, who the hell is that? It's Munetaka Murakami. Remember that name? I got Japan winning the whole thing. So you got USA, I got Japan, and this was the Arm Barn, the first episode. Tucker, this was awesome. I can't wait to keep breaking stuff down with you. We start with the World Baseball Classic. We're going to be doing stuff in season. We're going to be having a ton of interviews with big leaguers. It's going to be great insight to inside the clubhouse of the Los Angeles Angels and teams beyond that. Because, of course, there's going to be starts where you face the Royals, for example, and you get to see Vinny Pasquantino, and you get to let us know kind of what you're seeing. Tons of great insight, too. Obviously, like, plug your social medias because of course people follow you, but I'm sure maybe they follow your Instagram, not your Twitter. Let people know where, of course, they can find you besides watching you on the television.
Instagram is Tuk Tuk. TikTok is Tuk Tuk as well, and then Twitter is Tuk6, I believe. So give me a follow. Gonna be doing a bunch of fun stuff this season. Looking forward to it. But I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. And I'm glad we finally got to do it. We had a couple of weeks where we were just going back and forth, and finally we got it to work out. And I think a WBC preview was great to start it off.
This is going to be fun, man. So I got Team Japan. He's got the United States. And with that, thank you, everybody.
Thank y'all.